Hey, let's do a fun one, huh? The planet is on fire, the future is uncertain, my country is being run by fascists and dipshits and fascist dipshits. Let's take a break and do a fun one. And if you're looking for fun, escapist Batman stories, there's no better place to look than the Silver Age of DC Comics. Just to make it extra fun, let's make it a crossover episode and bring Superman into it as well. We're going back to 1965 and diving into the pages of World's Finest Comics number 153 for a story titled The Clash of the Cape and Cowl. Written by Edmund Hamilton, penciled by Kurt Swan, and inked by George Klein, this, as we are reminded repeatedly throughout, is an imaginary story. What that means for all you canon hawks is that basically this one doesn't count. It doesn't take place in the regular continuity in which the rest of the stories being published by DC Comics at the time were set. It's like DC's equivalent of a Marvel what-if story, or the sort of thing DC might have published under the Elseworlds imprint if it had come along 30 years later. It's an imaginary story. Even more imaginary than Batman and Superman stories usually are. The thing that sets this imaginary story apart from the stories typically printed in World's Finest Comics is that in this one, Batman hates Superman. The title page illustrates this by showing Batman slashing a portrait of Superman while exclaiming through a thought bubble, "Superman, how I hate him. Only I know that he killed my father, but I'll have my revenge if it's the last thing I do." Kudos to Edmund Hamilton for not holding back when coming up with a reason for Batman and Superman to be enemies. What's a good reason for Batman to hate Superman in my imaginary story? Let me think. Oh, I know. He thinks Superman whacked his father. Why not? It's not as if Hamilton had to worry about an editor telling him, "That's going too far." That sentence was never spoken at the offices of DC Comics until at least 1969. In this kooky, mixed-up imaginary world, young Bruce Wayne's mother has died of unspecified causes some years ago, and his father, Thomas, is a famous research scientist who is a big fan of Superboy and is developing an anti-kryptonite serum to help Superboy out. One day, Superboy himself drops by Thomas Wayne's lab and says, "Hey, I heard you're working on an anti-kryptonite serum. Can I get some of that?" Thomas reluctantly declines Superboy's request since he hasn't had time to test the serum yet. That night, Bruce Wayne hears a crash coming from his father's lab. He rushes in to find his father dead on the floor, the experimental anti-kryptonite serum missing, and a familiar-looking red and blue blur flying out the window. Bruce comes to the obvious conclusion. Superboy, impatient to get his hands on that serum, returned to steal it, and when Thomas tried to stop him, Superboy broke his skull. Bruce swears right then and there to prove that Superboy is his father's killer, and to bring Superboy to justice, even if it takes the rest of his life. From there, things proceed along the same lines as in the non-imaginary version of Batman's life. For a while, Bruce grows up, trains himself to be the world's greatest detective, becomes Batman, earns a reputation for heroism and crime fighting, adopts the orphaned Dick Grayson as his ward and his sidekick, Robin the Boy Wonder, and things are apparently pretty great for some time. The dynamic duo keeping the streets of Gotham City safe. Yeah, baby! But Batman has not forgotten his vow. The vow he made over the body of his father as it grew cold and stiff on the laboratory floor. The vow to bring Superman to justice. The vow of vengeance. So one day, apparently apropos of nothing, Batman decides Vengeance Day has arrived and randomly announces to Robin that they're going to Metropolis to handle some business with Superman. Robin is thrilled. "I can't wait to meet Superman," he says, because Robin doesn't know that Batman blames Superman for the murder of his father. The reason he became Batman in the first place, that's never come up. The story tells us by this point they've been a team long enough to have earned widespread renown, and the conversation never happened where Robin's like, "So, Batman, God, I hate Superman so much." "Huh? Yeah, what is it?" "Why'd you become Batman?" "What kind of question is that? How would you like it if I invaded your privacy? Why'd you become Robin?" Because my parents were killed at the circus, and you took me in?" and trained me? The whole thing was pretty much your idea. Did something like that happen to you, Batman? Anyway, shortly after announcing their trip to Metropolis, Batman is vowing out loud to avenge his father's death by destroying Superman, and Robin walks in and overhears him. Batman says, "That's right. It's time you knew the truth, Robin. The truth I've kept from you all this time for some reason. My father was killed by Superboy, who grew up to become Superman. And soon, thanks to me, he will become Super Guy in prison." Robin says, "I think you're wrong about Superman murdering your father." And Batman responds by slapping the shit out of him. Yes, that's where that meme came from. This story from World's Finest number 153. If you've ever seen the meme and wondered what context could possibly justify Batman smacking the teeth out of Robin's head, now you know. Batman said, "Superman killed my father," and Robin said, "Are you sure though?" "Fall silent, insolent whelp!" Faced with the shocking betrayal of his partner, Batman does the only thing he can do in this situation. He uses a hypnosis machine he got from a supervillain to erase Dick Grayson's memories of being Robin, dumps him in an orphanage, and resumes his quest for revenge against Superman. You know, this period of comics gets a lot of attention for how outlandish and goofy it can be, but I just want to say that the way writers and artists show our heroes casually doing things that should be utterly unforgivable, as if they're no big deal, is also one of my favorite things about the Silver Age. Batman flies to Metropolis with a plan. Set up a secret base inside a lead-lined water tower, and conduct surveillance on Superman until he discovers the secret location of the Fortress of Solitude. Batman is watching through one of the peepholes he's drilled in the side of the water tower when Superman flies by. So, Batman grabs a rifle, and Batman packing heat in a story where he hates Superman? Are we sure Zack Snyder didn't write this? Oh wait, no, that can't be. This story was published before Zack Snyder was born. And also, it's too enjoyable. Anyway, it turns out it's just an air rifle that Batman's got, and he uses it to fire a radioactive tracking device into Superman's cape, which Batman then uses to keep tabs on Supes as he flies around the world performing the various heroic acts, which, in Batman's mind, he does to, I don't know, try and make up for the fact that he's a murderer? Or make sure no one suspects that he might be a murderer? Well, whatever the reason, it's all going to come crashing down as soon as Batman locates the Fortress of Solitude and finds the evidence he needs to prove Superman killed his father. Things take an unexpected turn when Lex Luthor and some hapless accomplices attempt to rob a Metropolis bank while Batman is nearby. Lex gets away, but Batman swoops in to capture the other members of his gang. Then Superman shows up to help, and Batman finds himself face to face with the man he blames for the death of his father. Superman's like, "Batman, nice to finally meet you. What brings you to Metropolis? Are you on the trail of some criminal?" And Batman's like, "Yes, I'm out to bring a vicious killer to justice." "Oh, maybe I can be of assistance. What's this killer's name?" "His name is Soupy." "Such an odd name. Is that all? Does he have a surname?" "Yes." "What is it?" "Surname." "The killer's surname is Surname?" "Correct." "So you're telling me you've come to Metropolis to hunt for a vicious killer named Soupy Surname?" "Yes. And I swear I shall not rest until Soupy Surname pays for his crime." "Well, I'd sure hate to be him. Let me know if I can be of any help." Superman is so eager to help out Batman that he even gives him a new utility belt, one outfitted with anti-gravity technology so that Batman can fly while he wears it. Batman accepts the gift, then goes right back to his search for the Fortress of Solitude. After tracing Superman's recent movements, Batman finds the entrance to the fortress. But now he has another problem. This is the Silver Age Fortress of Solitude, which means he can't get inside just by sliding in between some crystal columns. There's a door that can only be unlocked with a gigantic key that only Superman is strong enough to lift. So, Batman uses his head. He grabs 2 rocks, throws one through the keyhole into the fortress, setting off the motion sensor alarm, and then hides. Sure enough, Superman arrives to see who set off the alarm. He unlocks the fortress and goes inside to check things out, and Batman sneaks in as well. Having gained access to the fortress, Batman throws his second rock back through the keyhole, setting off the alarm again. Batman hides, Superman comes to investigate, finds the rocks, and deduces that natural erosion must have caused these rocks to crumble off the outer face of the fortress and fall into the keyhole, setting off the alarm. Satisfied that the fortress is secure, Superman locks up and flies away, leaving Batman alone in the fortress. Batman begins searching for the anti-kryptonite serum that was taken from his father's laboratory, reasoning that if Superman has it, it would prove that he was the killer. But Batman can't find it. He makes some other interesting discoveries, including that Superman's secret identity is Clark Kent. He learns this when he finds the fortress's Clark Kent room, which comes complete with a realistic mannequin of Clark Kent. I wonder if he also found the other creepy serial killer rooms Superman set up in honor of Lois and Jimmy. Either way, it doesn't matter. Batman could not care less about the stunning revelation that Superman and Clark Kent are the same person. He goes right back to searching for the anti-kryptonite serum, but he doesn't find it. Having gone over every square inch of the fortress and come up empty-handed, Batman makes a decision. With no evidence to link Superman to the murder of his father, Batman abandons his mission to force Superman to pay for his father's murder legally and decides to just kill him instead. Who else do you turn to for help in killing Superman than Lex Luthor, the man who has failed to kill Superman more than anyone? Batman tracks down Lex's hideout, reveals himself as Bruce Wayne, explains that Superman killed his father, and promises to help Lex come up with a plan to set a foolproof kryptonite trap for Superman. That plan sends Superman a message using skywriting, and when Superman answers the message, whip a kryptonite batarang into his chest. The batarang is coated in super adhesive glue, so Superman can't get rid of it. He plummets to Earth, and Batman takes him to Lex's hideout, where they shut him up in a glass case filled with kryptonite dust and wait for him to die. Batman's like, I want him to know it was me. And he takes off his cowl and shows his face to the dying Superman and says, I'm Bruce Wayne, you fucker! You killed my dad, and now I'm killing you back! Ugh! Lex laughs and says, too bad Superman doesn't have that anti-kryptonite serum he stole from your father, eh, Batman? And Batman says, what? And Lex says, the anti-kryptonite serum your father invented. I must have seen it mentioned in a newspaper article about his murder. Batman says, no, bullshit, because I never told anyone the anti-kryptonite serum was stolen the night my father was killed, which means the only way you could know about it is if you were actually my father's killer. Batman lunges, but Lex is like, whoa, hang on. It's not what you think. I can explain. It's actually, it's a really funny story. So there I was, teenage Lex, lurking in the bushes outside your father's laboratory, and I overheard him and Superboy talking about the anti-kryptonite serum. So I says to myself, if Superboy gets that serum, it'll spoil my plans to use kryptonite on him. That's just what I said. So I decided to use my remote control flying robot, which I just so happened to have, and which just so happened to look exactly like Superboy, to break into your father's lab that night and steal the serum. Unfortunately, I wasn't so great at piloting remote control flying robots back in those days, and I inadvertently crashed the robot into your father and killed him. See? It was an accident, man. Didn't I tell you? It was funny. Realizing he spent most of his life blaming the wrong person for the death of his father, Batman smashes open the glass case and pulls Superman clear of the deadly kryptonite. Lex is not happy about not being consulted on this sudden change of plan, so he grabs his Z-Ray and shoots Batman in the arm, which is apparently not a good spot to be shot with a Z-Ray, because Batman immediately senses that he's sustained a mortal wound. With a last burst of strength, he tackles Lex and holds him until Superman recovers from the kryptonite poisoning, which luckily only takes a few seconds. Superman kneels over Batman and says, saving my life at the last second more than makes up for joining forces with my greatest enemy and setting a trap that almost killed me. I promise Lex will pay for the murder of your father. Batman says, thanks. You know, if things had happened differently, we might have been friends. Maybe even a great team. Perhaps, but you were already part of a great team. Don't forget your youthful sidekick, Robin the Boy Wonder. Oh shit. And he's dead. Didn't I tell you this was a fun one? A World's Finest story with art by Kurt Swan is its own reason to read it. I don't need anything else. But the thing about this one that gives me an extra chuckle is how thin the imaginary story gimmick is. Edmund Hamilton makes this an imaginary story so he can really give free rein to his creativity and craft a plot where things are slightly different than they are in the mainstream story universe. Okay, I know Batman hates Superman and wants to prosecute and or kill him is greater than a slight difference, but think about it. Other than that, pretty much everything is the same. Superboy, or as it turns out, a robot made to look exactly like Superboy, kills Thomas Wayne, giving Bruce Wayne a lifelong hatred of Superman, but Bruce still grows up to become Batman. He still takes in Dick Grayson, and Dick still becomes Robin for a little while. Except for his grudge against Superman, Batman is still a heroic and celebrated figure. And most importantly, Superman is still Superman. He remains the goodest good guy. As far as we see, he is exactly the same as he usually is. He even gives Batman a present like 5 minutes after meeting him. Which means the imaginary portion of this imaginary story boils down to, what if Batman blamed the wrong person for his father's death and it made him a bigger asshole than normal toward that person and also toward anyone who defended that person? Sorry, Robin. Viewed from the point of view of a Batman fan, this story, in addition to being an entertainingly warped Silver Age adventure, provides an interesting glimpse into the obsessive side of Batman, before the grittier modern era made that a more prominent trait of the character. We're used to seeing a driven, single-minded, ethically questionable Batman in stories from, say, the mid-1980s on, but the mid-60s? This issue of World's Finest was published in 1965. That's the year before the debut of the Adam West TV show, on which one of the central jokes is what an impossibly straight-arrow, upstanding citizen type of guy Batman is. And here he is teaming up with Lex Luthor to plot Superman's murder. Sure, imaginary story, etc., but even so, an insight into the darker side of the character, and a glimpse of things to come, albeit a distorted one. Earlier, I mentioned how casually Silver Age superheroes would do things that would be horrifying if presented more realistically, like Batman wiping Robin's memory for objecting to his revenge quest against Superman, and the ending of this story with Batman dying after almost killing Superman reminds me of another related characteristic of Silver Age stories that I also like. They could get surprisingly dark. Because most stories were light in tone, and because they often dealt with outlandish plots that veered wildly into sci-fi and fantasy, we think of the Silver Age as being a very silly time in the history of comics, and it was, for sure. But just look at this issue of World's Finest I've been telling you about. Batman spends most of his life believing Superman murdered his father, immediately turns on Robin, fries his brain, and dumps him in an orphanage when Robin pushes back a little bit on Batman's hatred of Superman, joins forces with Lex Luthor, and comes up with a plan to kill Superman when he realizes he won't be able to make a legal case against him, realizes that Superman is actually innocent and that he spent his life hating and plotting against an innocent person, and dies in a final act of redemption, no matter how breezy the presentation is. When you get right down to it, that's some dark shit. It reminds me of the great Superman story, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, by Alan Moore and Kurt Swan, that serves as a kind of belated unofficial epilogue for the Silver Age. I devoted a video of my Best Superman Ever series to it. Though generally considered a classic, some fans object to how grim it is. Lots of beloved characters die in that story in some pretty heartless, brutal ways. The thing is, that's not out of line with the Silver Age style, and like this issue of World's Finest, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow was framed as an imaginary story. What else did readers expect? The imaginary story label was often an indicator that the writer was about to indulge their bloodlust. This story from World's Finest 153 concludes with Batman dying on the floor. They try to lighten the mood at the very end with a closing caption that says, "But things happened differently in the real world. We know that Batman and Superman are actually best friends. This is only an imaginary story." Ha 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 ha. Still wraps up on kind of a downer, though, doesn't it? Doesn't have to, though. This being an imaginary story, we can imagine a happier ending, can't we? Maybe after Batman's death, Superman goes to that orphanage, picks up Dick Grayson, takes him to the Fortress of Solitude, and uses one of his high-tech alien gadgets to reverse the memory-erasing hypnosis Batman laid on him. Superman? What's going on? The last thing I remember was being at the orphanage and fighting another boy over a bowl. A bowl of what? Just an empty bowl. There weren't enough bowls for everyone. It's a really bad orphanage. Why didn't Bruce at least drop me off at a nice orphanage? He's rich. Was. Was? He's not rich anymore? No, he's not alive anymore. Also, in his defense, there really are no nice orphanages. Dead? Batman is Bruce. Bruce is dead? It's okay, son. I know everything now. You do? Yes. Batman revealed his true identity to me moments before his death, while he was still trying to murder me in a tank filled with kryptonite. After I picked you up from the orphanage, I dressed you in your Robin costume before restoring your memory, because I thought it would help you regain your lost memories more quickly. Okay, that explains the costume. I was wondering about that. Can we back up to the part where Batman died while trying to murder you? Ah, sure. So, apparently, he thought I had killed his father back when I was Superboy, and— Right, I know that much. He told me he blamed you for his father's death right before he erased my memory and dumped me at that orphanage that should be under federal investigation. I told him he was way off base, and he slapped the heck out of me. It really hurt. You don't have to worry about that with me, Robin. Okay. That's good to— Because of my super strength, any slap you took from me would be instantly fatal. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Want to be my sidekick? Much better. And now, let's close with a moment of silence in memory of the imaginary Batman of World's Finest number 153. Yes, he blamed the wrong person for his father's death. Yes, he tag-teamed with Lex Luthor and almost killed Superman. Yes, he mind-wiped Robin after smacking the shit out of him. But he was only trying to do the right thing. That's no less than we would expect from any Batman. Even one who maybe wasn't quite the best Batman ever.